What are we doing today?
We're going to go through, I don't remember what I was talking about. We're going to go through the workshop.
We never know what we're talking about here, guys. We're just figuring it out as we go.
Yeah, a lot of people put a lot of cool stuff in the workshop. I'm going to start off by saying thank you guys for sharing your stuff with us. Having the opportunity to look over the stuff that you guys make and seeing your comments and stuff is really helpful for us as well. When people provide feedback, not just the two people observing it gain the benefit of that. Everyone learns from it. So thank you.
Absolutely. Especially if it is very constructive and positive feedback. That's what we really want to hear. What we love to see in these kind of things. Does that mean a mermaid is a fish tor? Yep. Actually, it should be a Piscator, right? Because Pisces. Anyway.
Well, I feel like you know what? Maybe.
Take us away. Take us in.
Our first thing here is the ham shanker, which is a melee weapon created by Blood Deuce. It is a simple melee weapon of uncommon or rare. You said it would be setting dependent how rare this item was, which is, I guess, true for a lot of items. Could be adjusted depending on your campaign. But I'm looking forward to seeing what this is. I haven't had the chance to read this one yet, but this magically regenerating leg of ham looks delicious and never shows signs of decay or rot. It exists as one of many failed creations of an embittered chefromancer. You gain a +1 bonus to attack and damage rolls made with this weapon. This simple melee weapon deals 1d8 bludgeoning damage. Once per day, you may consume the ham as a bonus action to regain hit points equal to 1d10 plus your character level. Once this property has been used, the damage changes to 1d6 piercing damage as only the bone remains. The ham reconstitutes itself daily at dawn. That sounds terrifying. After which the damage reverts to normal and its property may be used again. Despite being delicious and providing fast recovery, the ham offers little energy beyond the initial burst and cannot be used to substitute a proper meal.
Oh!
You can't just eat this ham. That can't be all. That can't be it.
So for those asking, Raz, for example, asking in the chat, and anyone who's confused on what this is, a chefromancer is a goofy, fun, Pete and Jeremy's D&D time original concept. I say original concept. It's totally been somewhere else before. But it is a spellcaster who uses magic to animate food, do food-related stuff, and it's all sorts of fun. Oh my goodness, my girlfriend brought me soda. Thank you, Jamie. I love you. But yeah, Chefromancy is related to Pete and Jeremy's D&D time. If you don't know what Pete and Jeremy's D&D time is, check out this channel next Friday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be good.
If any of you are in a place that doesn't do dumb daylight savings times, I'm sorry if our times for today were thrown off.
Oh, yeah. I realize that's a struggle for most people. Apparently, California is not going to be changing again. This is the end.
Oh, really?
We're not going
lucky.
back again.
It's bad.
I'm very excited. We're going to join Arizona and Alaska is the two other states, and Hawaii, I think.
So that was the ham shaker. In terms of uncommon or rare, I think that the only thing
this is the rare item.
Yeah, the only thing that kind of changes it for me is it's considered a simple melee weapon, so a lot of like classes that wouldn't get access to a weapon that
that's a lot of healing
can wield this, and it is a significant amount of healing. So I think rare is pretty much across the board as well. Also, I don't know if this is supposed to require attunement, but it seems like it probably should to me.
I think at rare you could maybe go without the attunement, but in Pete and Jeremy's D&D time, this would probably require attunement.
In
a regular campaign, it probably would not.
My thoughts on, and maybe I should think more about that, my thoughts on what requires attunement has been really skewed by doing so many magic items for Pete and Jeremy's D&D time. So you might be right there. I guess I'm not even sure anymore after all that time in the bag.
Overall, it's actually a really well put together item, Blood. I really like what you've done so far. You seem to have checked every box, very thorough. There is a little bit of complication in the damage die decreasing to the D6, but it's flavorful enough that I think it works pretty well. I like it a lot. The one thing I would maybe change, if you say it never shows signs of decay or rot, that doesn't mean it doesn't decay or rot. It just doesn't show it. so you got to be careful with that.
Yeah, that's something that could be interpreted.
I'm just teasing, of course.
This is, I think, not the intent, but just a thing that I was thinking as I was reading this was I really wanted that 1d6 piercing damage to be 1d4 bludgeoning damage. So it would just be a club. It would effectively be a club once the ham was gone. That's a thing that I was just thinking and that I like, but it works just as well the way that you have it.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be, honestly, using the 1d8 bludgeoning damage and the 1d6 piercing damage rather than conventional weapon types, like calling it a mace that turns into a club kind of fits the bill a lot more typically for conventional magic items. But for Pete and Jeremy's D&D time, I mean, this works perfectly fine. Just a consideration.
It's obviously, that is the style, because it's the kind of goofy thing we run, as well as it references Chefromancy directly. So.
If not eaten for 3 weeks, make a DC 12 con save against poison. Very nice, Jugs. I hope I said that right. If I said that wrong, I apologize. I can't read.
Yeah, you can tell what setting it was designed for, most certainly.
Eberron, clearly. Pete, by the way, thank you for your submission, Blood. We really appreciate you sharing your cool ideas here. I like these a lot. What do we want to talk about next?
Next, we have this martial archetype from Cherry Rosia. If you're still here hanging out, holler at us, let us know.
Yeah, we'll pop over to there. So this is a big one. There's a lot of stuff here. There's a ton of stuff here. This was tossed over in completed works. Also, the ham shaker was in completed works, and it's complete. This was the martial artist, which is a fighter subclass, and there is a ton to take in. Honestly, probably a little bit more than we have time to go through all of in full detail and really like hash out. So probably going to go a little bit big picture on this. You want me to take a first swing at it, Pete?
Yeah, by all means.
All right, so let me dive right in. Third level, so this is a fighter subclass, it's a martial archetype. And specifically, this is the martial artist. So I'm going to imagine this is going to be about like maneuvering and like leaping around and doing cool stuff. Basic battle moves, they get at third level. Cost points to use if you run out of points, and you gain 1 level of exhaustion to use 1 point. Oh, wow. That's a very pricey cost. All battle moves have double either dex or strength to hit, depending on the weapon, and regain half your total hit points when you take a short rest. Starting at 5 points and gain 2 additional points at 7, 10, and 15. You also gain 3 additional points at 18th level. You regain half your battle points after a short rest, and all the battle points again after a long rest. Okay, so I guess these battle points have to tie into some other ability.
Yes, and I see some of these are here, these are the basic battle moves. And it looks like there's 3 of those, and then 4 of the advanced ones, which are referenced a little bit further down. But they are things like, I see this one, this is called Lotus Slash, which is like you do a 15-foot line attack and do kind of a big extra damage attack. You see Blossom Dash here, which is kind of like the samurai dream of you send the sword out and kind of move past and then knock someone down as you hit them. And then Charging Strike is extra damage, but I think it requires you to charge. Oh, I'm sorry, Charge Strike is the one where you charge up your attack. So you like do extra, you kind of do the classic anime and charge up and then hit a little bit more powerfully. And these are the kind of core things here. So
those are your basic moves.
Yes, these are the core things that this class does. And
right there.
You gain, you start off with 5 points, so essentially you can do most of these. I mean, a couple of them you can do 5 times, or there's one that costs a little bit more, which is the extra damage on like that vertical slash.
Can I not zoom in on here? There we go. Sorry, I was trying to zoom in so the folks could actually maybe read along a little bit with us.
Yeah. Okay, so
yeah, let's talk a little bit.
Yeah, to broad strokes this, because again, as I was saying, I don't know if you were here, Roz. You were saying we probably don't have time to go through like everything on this, just because there's so much here. But this is the brunt of it, I think, of these first 2 pages here. And one thing that I think this subclass really needs before I could say it's like I would want to say it's complete, is it needs some clearer language. There's a lot of stuff here where I'm not entirely sure like how some of these things work. It says it in kind of rough terms, but it says, for example, you slash upward, hitting any enemy in a 15-foot vertical line, and then follow up with a secondary attack with your offhand weapon as a stab. If you hit the enemy with a vertical slash, you deal double the strength damage. For starters, the phrasing like strength damage is a phrasing that's not really convention in 5e. It just would deal like the damage of the weapon attack, and then I don't know if it's intended to be like, if it's intended to be you add your strength modifier twice to the damage on this attack, then that would be the phrasing that you'd use for that. You would say you add your strength modifier additional time and not refer to some of the language here is like very colorful. For example, you have you follow up with a secondary attack. That sounds cool, and I get the image that you're referencing, like you jump up and then after you hit them, you get to hit them again with the follow-up attack. But the phrasing for that, it would be clearer to me if it was just kind of phrased
you make an
out
additional attack with your offhand weapon.
Indeed.
Yeah. And I think there's actually a lot of really cool concepts here. I really like the what do you call it? The design concept, right? The Lotus Slash. Great name, great flavor. I love the idea of the dash and strike along the way. And like it's a very strong concept. It just needs a little bit of polish up around the edges. Taking that 100 grit sandpaper, then the 500 sandpaper, and really whittling it down. The biggest concern overall I would have, or not concern, but direction to take it from here, would be to try and simplify it a little bit. There is a lot here, and these are the 4 basics, but then there's more advanced options here, and then there are even more basic sets down here, I think. Yeah, Blade Wave, Spacing Slash, Palm Slash, and then more advanced features. There are quite a few of these, and I get that you made sets for one-handed weapons and sets for dual wielding. It's very cool, and I think there could be room for it, but you really have to be very careful with how you put them together when you're putting that much complexity into it. 5e, unlike previous editions like 3rd edition, for example, or 3.5, 5e is a very minimalist edition.
Yeah.
They try and in as little as possible put the mechanics together.
Oftentimes so that your mechanics and your ideas, for example, this Lotus Slash of jumping upwards and hitting people in a line can apply, a lot of people, you want to create it in such a way that they can use it in a different way and use it for their own kind of character and have it feel kind of unique to them despite it being part of the subclass on a whole. So finding those really simple ideas that a lot of people have room to interpret is a good first goal, I think, here.
But overall, I mean, the concepts here are very strong. I mean, the leap strike, these are the kind of things that you think of when you think of the fast-paced, right, blade-wielding character. I very much like that. There's a variant below which kind of explains. Let's jump down. And by the way, awesome art to kind of visualize what you were going for here.
Yeah. When we were speaking before, I think you mentioned that this is Rosia's art they themselves did.
Very cool.
Absolutely incredible. Yeah.
I envy your artistic ability.
I do as well.
If I tried to draw something like this, it would be like not anything
you
like
would not
this.
be able to interpret it.
It was very good. But yeah, okay, let's go down and see if we can see that variant feature. Because one thing I do want to say, I really liked that you did make considerations here for a dual wielding fighter versus a one-handed weapon fighter. It was like a sword, an additional sword and shield. I think that's really neat. Something that could really give the subclass some legs to stand on its own, as opposed to any of the other subclasses. Because most of the other ones don't really care whether you're wielding a sword and shield, 2 swords, a bow. The other subclasses don't care.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
actually an interesting point.
Having these distinctions of So here are some features you could pick for your one-handed combat. There's some features you could pick for your two-handed combat. Could really make this subclass stand out and be a very compelling and unique, like going back to our, I don't have the rubric open anymore, but going and looking at that rubric, right? Give this subclass specifically some space and like a specific niche that the other subclasses absolutely can't do. But yeah, let's go down to that variant feature and more incredible art. Holy crap. Absolutely beautiful. Regaining extra points, shield shattering.
There's definitely potential, Jeremy. I think that's a cool point about the use of different weapons, because that's actually something that a lot of fighters in 5e, they pick a weapon that they're good at, and then they just use that. So I really like the idea of a subclass that encourages fighters to use the fact that they're proficient in every weapon and good at all weapons. Because that's something that nothing in 5e does, and that's a cool thing about fighters to me.
Yeah, and I can see the effects here that Razi had put together. Basic moves, advanced moves, and improved moves, how you can brew your own abilities for this class. So I think that's kind of the idea you are going for here. You had a lot of concepts of, here are some examples of cool martial art-like moves that you could have. And basically, we should take 1 of 3 points, can hit up to 2 attacks, or 1 effect with 1 attack. Yeah, the problem, I guess the point here is you need to define, right, what one effect is, because that's not like, effect isn't its own kind of standalone term in 5e. There aren't a lot of key words in 5e like they have been in previous editions.
So I think that
maybe that's up here and I just missed it.
For me, the biggest place where this needs to really start coming together is on a lot of these moves. I think it just needs a little bit more clarity and a little bit more use of conventional 5th edition language, which you can find a lot of that. If you're like unfamiliar with some of the language of 5th edition, you can just look at the other fighter subclasses and really just like nail down, or not even necessarily fighter subclasses, but other subclasses outside of us, and really nail down some of the things like, for example, instead of Lotus Slash, you slash upward, hitting an enemy in a 15-foot vertical line. Because there's a lot of ways that, like, I don't know how to, like, if I was a player and reading this, I wouldn't know how to interpret that first line. I'm just using this one as an example. There's some other ones that are kind of like that, but I don't know if that means I'm making like a ranged attack where I'm like shooting energy out of my sword. I don't know if I'm hitting the things in between where I'm starting from and I'm slashing. I don't know if I'm like jumping up and then hitting. Or if this is just like a really long range where I'm just making a super long melee attack through kind of like the martial acrobatics. So it could definitely just use, find everywhere that it doesn't use, like anywhere you choosing to use the flavor of the word slash, or you... As
a stab, that's the key one here.
You dash, and like, for example, here it says...
Especially because dash is a keyword in 5e. And it doesn't mean what you mean, what you have it in here.
Here it says in Blossom Dash, you dash for 15 feet where you stand to impale enemies in a straight line. If you fail to impale, like, I don't know what it means when you say impale. So that has to be phrased as something like to make an attack against each enemy in a straight line, or each enemy in a straight line has to make a saving throw, or they suffer damage equal to your weapon dice. These are different ways that you could phrase that depending on what you want it to be. But until it has that, it would be hard to implement for, not you, because obviously you very much understand.
Oh, you know what it is, yes.
But for other people like reading it, there's just some clarity issues there, which there's also, I know a lot of people around here, if you have questions with that would be very much able to help you and start making some of these a little bit more clear on the whole.
Yeah, and I think the big things to really focus on, to remember while you're making those, you're kind of simplifying it down a little bit, just remember the things that this really excels at, right? This is a class option which is all about cool maneuvers and giving some versatility of your types of weapons you use. So if you can make sure to retain those concepts, because I think that is what makes this so special. And it's important to keep those kind of things in there and not let those get muddled trying to simplify it. But I like this a lot.
Yeah.
I see you have some parrying rules in here as well.
Yeah, that was
Is
one of
that
the
one of the
abilities that they get at 7th level. They get
7th
the
level?
ability to parry. I'm sorry, yeah, 7th level.
Or 2 points of the parry move. You can parry once. Yeah, like it doesn't specify. Does the parry just block that? If you roll an attack and if you tie or exceed their attack, you can add either proficiency bonus or 2 points for the parry move. Yeah, it's not super clear exactly how that would necessarily work, but I get what you're going for here. Excuse me. Oh my goodness.
So I think that's going to be the key thing here is just finding those points where the language is colorful. And I know it feels kind of wrong to like take some of like the color out of it. Like you have a lot of cool language here. Like I see it all over the place. You know, slashes, follow-up slashes, vertical slashing energy. Like there's so many cool words and phrases, but just for clarity's sake, a lot of them just need to be codified in the language of 5e.
What 5e will often have for those kind of things, like for example, at Blossom Dash, right? The idea is you run forward in a 15-foot line, and I think the idea is, and you attack each enemy along that line, right? You can have that first sentence be, you dash forward, striking each enemy along your path. And then you can say, that's period, end that sentence. You move forward in a 15-foot line. Each enemy, make an attack roll against each enemy within that path. If this, then, you can have that one first sentence of flavor, and then just make sure all of the actual specific mechanical aspects are clear and distinct from the flavor. That way they, excuse me, oof, full of coughs. That way the reader will hopefully be able to find a clearer way of interpreting what you put together. But I like this a lot still. Yeah. I think this is a really cool design. I think the Blossom Dash, Lotus Slash, the very like inspired feel. I mean, obviously, you know what all of these are. They're right here, all drawn out, and they're very cool. I think right here, this is our Lotus Dash. Is that what that one's the Lotus Dash, right? Blossom Dash. We got our Blossom Dash.
I can see the Lotus Slash in that like big vertical. Mm-hmm. The one on the top right looks like a Lotus Slash to me.
And including art is really cool. That's something I wish we could do in ours.
Yeah, same.
But we are not artistically gifted.
But I think that's
we have a lot more to talk about.
Yeah, there's a ton of these to go through.
The next one for now.
But thank you so much for sharing. So much for sharing it with us, Russ. Yeah.
Pete, tell me about this bag of devouring.
Monmonmo for Matty Morgs. Matty Morgs posted this one. I don't know if Matty's hanging out at the moment. I think I saw him earlier. I don't know if he's still here.
Oh, I see, Matty. You used the Dungeon Master's Guide stuff here to make this legendary artifact.
Indeed. So it started with the baseline, and he posted the video in which he made it. The link to the clip on Twitch. Oh, he did this one on stream. And I haven't had the opportunity to watch and see the full process, but I believe it's using all the Dungeon Master's Guide rules, and there's a lot going on here. But it's a bag of devouring with a bunch of other stuff.
Just a second, Pete. I'm interrupting. Frog, if you want to draw art for the Trash Druid and the Dreamwalker Monk, we will always accept your amazing art. We're never opposed to that, my dude.
I cannot think of a truer statement that has been spoke.
Pete, go on, please. I'm sorry.
So read this. There's
our shill session.
There's a quote here. Put me on its face.
Christ. Oh no.
It's a rarity. It's a legendary artifact. The creator was a dragon. So this is some of the details surrounding. A lot of the times, if you're doing an artifact tier item, you get a lot more detail and flavor than is on a typical Magic item in 5e. So it was made by the scales and talons shed from a dragon, and it may include some precious metals and gems from the horde. And it grows slightly warm when it's within 120 feet of a dragon. The intended user, oddly, is a fiend, and you can start to see immediately the random generation in this, which is that the item is colored black and features blasphemous runes and lewd carvings throughout. Celestials find the item's presence repulsive. Some details from history. So I guess it was made by a black dragon whose scales and talons feel that it is sinister.
Or a tarnished silver dragon. Whoa.
This item is linked to a great evil deed, such as a massacre or an assassination. It might have a name or be closely associated with a villain who used it. Anyone familiar with the item's history is likely to treat it and its owner with suspicion. And then it has, so we're getting in now to the minor properties. Wait, is that the... Oh, minor property. These aren't the true minor properties. These aren't the beneficial properties. These are just the minor properties. So it also has a hidden message. A message is hidden somewhere on the item. It might be visible only at a certain time of year, under the light of one phase of the moon, or in a specific location. So this has a ton of flavor to start with, because, Jeremy, I haven't read this section of the Dungeon Master's Guide.
Yeah, I have quite a bit, actually. This is, so you've noticed probably by this point, chat, that all of these give you a lot of ideas that are very vague. It has some kind of a hidden message. Here are some things they could be. And the whole point of that is, as a dungeon master, when you're using these, the rules and the Dungeon Master's Guide to make magic items, and you're getting these concepts, it's to inspire you, right? It's to say, hey, it has a hidden message of some kind. What could that be in your setting, right? How would that make sense in your world, or in the game that you're running? Say if you're running Tomb of Annihilation, how does this fiendish dragon hidden message thing tie together? And I'm sure there are quite a few ways you could tie that together in that module. Maybe you think of the dragon Syndalore that exists in that setting, and maybe you tie something in between that and the kind of antagonist to Sararak, or maybe some other things. But that's kind of the concept here, right? Is to get you thinking and saying, here are some ideas. Put them together. Plug in the puzzle pieces.
Find out how it works out. And Maddie,
you discover the item as you go.
Maddie embraces the random more than, unlike anyone else in history. So if you're doing this
in history,
I mean,
Maddie Moore's your historic fellow.
This is true. But if you're making an item like this, don't feel like, if you get something that you think is ridiculous, for example, something that's going to get a little funky comes up in a second, so I'll do this quirk: possessive. The item demands attunement when first wielded or worn, and it doesn't allow its bearer to attune to other items. It's very interesting. Also very
nice.
Brutal.
Oh my.
Appearance, from Cold Spark here. Appearance: unusual hair color on a bag. What? Indeed. Everything that you get when you're rolling for random, sometimes you can just, once you start to get an idea and you start to be inspired, you can just start picking stuff that makes sense. But
yeah, you don't have to go full random. Pete, I think the idea is, so here is a bag of holding in 5th edition D&D. And the bag of devouring is basically just a bag of holding. So I guess it has hair on the top.
Yeah, it's just slightly more sinister looking bag of holding.
Well, this one has hair.
Well, it's also got black dragon scales, is what it's made from.
Maybe the strap is made out of giant's hair.
And these are the kind of things that you can come up with as you're randomly generating. See, we're even doing it now. It's a really effective tool to get inspiration going.
Maybe it makes your hair color unusual. See, I like that one, Far. That's a good way to save this.
So anyway, it's got a high charisma. It's got a low wisdom. It does not sound like it has a high charisma because this bag's got hair. Talent, it's graded with animals. Its mannerisms is it choose something that makes sense.
Yeah, we're good there.
It's irritable. Its ideal is domination. It's dedicated to fulfilling a personal life goal, and its flaw is foolhardy bravery. It can speak to you naturally. The bag of devouring, I imagine the little mouth on the side opens up and talks, which is very cool. Is how I saw it, but
yikes.
It can hear and has normal vision out to 120 feet. Here's where I got lost, Jeremy.
Oh, it's chaotic good.
The alignment of this bag is chaotic good.
Yeah, no, I get it. It doesn't want to eat people. It's just what it does.
It's what it does. Special purpose. The item seeks its creator and wants to understand why it was created. I want to understand it too. And then it has a few minor and major beneficial and detrimental properties. These are the things that you put on artifacts to make them unique.
Yes,
we have an
they're
immunity
very
to
important.
disease, and you get to cast Contagion once a day. Oh, Contagion's such a brutal spell. I rarely see it cast, but it's one of those like
Mhm.
one of those devastating ones. And then minor and major detrimental properties. So in this case, if you touch a gem or piece of jewelry, it halves the value of it while you're holding this thing. I imagine the bag just takes a bite out of it.
Yum, 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 yum.
And then also, creatures with a challenge rating of 0, as well as plants that aren't creatures, drop to 0 hit points when within 10 feet of the artifact. Oh my god!
It just eats everything.
That is a major detrimental property.
And then the fun stuff, it consists of fruits, plants, small woodland creatures, large woodland creatures, woodlands, fruit groves, fruit farmers, and small cities.
It's got a
hidden tickle spot inside.
Which reveals its message, its hidden message. This is a fun way to make an artifact. If you need to make an artifact, try this out. Sometimes you might get something wacky. I've also set out to do that before and like discovered really cool stuff this way. And it's kind of a fun. This is a fun exercise, and like this is a way that you can brew artifacts and brew weapons, and that's kind of why I wanted to talk about this one, because like this is just a good tool to know how to use. Like the Dungeon Master's Guide has put out all these cool resources for you to interact with. You should check them out and interact with them.
And here's a note, just for anyone watching who's like, this is a lot of stuff. This seems really hard to make an artifact. You don't have to do everything here. You could just roll a creator and roll with that. You could just roll, right, a detail from history, right? You don't have to go and roll. There's a whole bunch of tables. Every little thing on here, from creator, intended user, detail, mystery, minor property, quirk, everything here is on a table in the Dungeon Master's Guide. You can just pick one or two of these to help you build an artifact. You don't have to go with all of them. When you go with all of them, though, this is what you get. You get Mon Mo, the Bag of Devouring.
In that case.
Oh, Cold Sparks put a leprechaun race in the workshop.
Oh, Cold Spark, a man after my own.
I'll never get past that one.
A man after my own heart. Cold Spark. I love leprechauns. I actually have a leprechaun race in my back pocket. Also that I made because I just wanted to play a leprechaun and I needed it. So I'm really excited. I'm very curious where we overlap. So that'll be fun. But let's talk next about the Blink Dagger. This was created by I believe this is created by Dude Man, but I forgot to write it here. I'm gonna check to make sure that I'm not attributing that, Jeremy, if you don't mind. Would you take it while I'm checking that out?
Yeah, so the Blink Dagger. It's a dagger. Apparently, Dude Man hadn't put a rarity on here, but it does require attunement. This dagger has runes across its blade that have a slight blue glow when the dagger is unsheathed. The dagger is considered magical for the purpose of overcoming resistances. It has 3 charges. When you throw the Blink Dagger, you may spend a charge to teleport to the location of the dagger. When you teleport this way, the dagger returns to your hand. The Blink Dagger regains 1d3 charges at dawn. This is super cool. Let's be real. This is an item that, like, everyone would want to some degree. It's just very, very neat. Realistically, what's in dagger's range? 20-60? So maximum 60 feet thrown. But it's just a very cool item.
Yeah, so you can teleport 60 feet a few times. I think it's, in some ways, I think it's a little bit of a reference to the Dota item. I don't know. That's like, I think the most famous Dota item is Blink Dagger. But very cool.
I mean, yeah, this is a iconic kind of item, but somehow it doesn't exist in 5e yet. So good on you, dude, man.
And I have a question here, Jeremy. So this dagger is considered magical for the purposes of overcoming resistances. I think that phrasing could be probably cut, right?
Yes, it is
Just say it's
unnecessary.
It's just it is a magic dagger, so it is always assumed that if the weapon is magic, then that is true.
Yep, that is completely correct. And so that text is used, I believe, for the druid's natural weapons. And the only reason it mentions that is because they are truly natural weapons, or for the monk's fists, which become magical. This is a magic weapon, but I don't know if it could it doesn't hurt to have, but at the same time, yeah, I think this is unnecessary. Other than that, I have very, very little to talk about here. This is just very good. I like the simplicity of the design. He didn't try and make this some legendary teleporting leap everywhere item. Sorry, dude, man. I assumed you were he. They didn't do that. Instead, dude, man put together an item that was very simple, very clean, and did its one thing really neatly and effectively. And so I really like this. This could probably be, what do you think, Peter? Uncommon or rare item?
I wanted to say on the lower. I was thinking the lower end of rare. But I'm kind of with you.
Yeah.
One thing that is a little bit off about it, and I think could use a little bit of extra specification, is there are niche cases. There we go. Got it in two. Where you might, based on the terrain or the situation in, be able to throw your dagger to a really far off spot. And I don't know how it's been. Like, for example, if you drop your dagger off a cliff, can you teleport to the bottom of the cliff? Or if you throw your dagger onto like a moving flying eagle, it's really up high.
Can you teleport up real high?
When it connects, there's a lot of things that. So I just think it needs either a maximum range or just when you hit, like when it makes contact with something you teleport, or just an extra piece of clarity to say when the teleport happened.
I agree. I had assumed that it had been capped by the 60-foot range of a thrown dagger. And so maybe that's something to say. When you throw the blink dagger to a location within 60 feet of you, you can.
Yeah, I think that's clearly the intent here. It's just there are some ambiguities that could come up with
the cliff is very funny sounding. And here's the thing. Me, in my home games, I'd almost prefer it that way. If a player thought to use the dagger to drop it off the cliff they needed to get down and then teleport to the bottom of the cliff, I'd be down with that.
That's very
very
cool.
neat to me. But I can if you're making something for the greater use of 5e, I think you do need that kind of limiter in there. How I run my games is convention.
No, I'm with you on that completely, because that's like way more fun. It's really fun when items have kind of vagueness in them like that, because players love to find those little exploits. Myself included.
It's so cool, right? That's part of like the love of 5e is what's the most creative way I can get around this problem.
I had fun thinking of that exception to it. I was thinking if I got this thing, I'd do this, I'd get down cliffs with it. So anyway, that's the blink dagger. I think it's a cool item.
Yeah, let's talk about this next one by V Bunny, the Hat of Conjure Stuffed Animals. Take it away, Pete.
Yes, this is kind of this and the patch of animation which are coming up next, I believe, are two items that are kind of meant to be used together. So here we have it. This fine top hat is unlike any other and has animals within its patterns. I think that is. This hat can be used to cast the spell Conjure Animals at 3rd level at will, except the animals conjured with it are inanimate, stuffed, cannot do anything, and have no value, but are cute in the size of the normal animal that would be conjured. So the question is, what is the power level of this item? The answer is common.
I think this is uncommon.
You think that conjuring a bunch of stuffed animals is uncommon?
They could be
Jeremy,
huge.
I'm lower than you.
They could be huge.
Yeah, but it's this.
Think about just the quantity of stuffed animal.
Yeah, but think of it. It's caster and conjure animals. So you're conjuring you could just conjure a stuffed bear.
You can conjure unlimited stuffed bears. Unlimited.
It's at will.
I'm sorry, it doesn't. Well, here's a couple of actual concerns here. You can cast a spell Conjure Animals. So this implies you still have to concentrate to keep the animals there. I don't think that's the intent you're going for. If that isn't, maybe you don't want to actually reference the spell Conjure Animals, since the only thing that this would interact with the Conjure Animals is the count and challenge rating limits. Yes, you do have to concentrate. Okay, so maybe you do keep it. Okay, this is just very, I don't know how to rate this.
I think it's common. Well, it's obviously it's meant to be combined with the next. Let's read the next item here.
Yeah, okay, I can agree it's common. Let's talk about this next IP.
This fine patch of a cute animal can be sewn onto any object that is inanimate and made of a stitched material as an action. An object with the patch comes to life and has the stats of an animated object of a similar size, except if this patch is sewn onto a stuffed animal, in which case the animal animated has the stats, attacks, and abilities of the creature it represents, but the creature is considered a construct. The animate object is under control of the creature. Put the patch on the object, cannot speak, but understands and obeys the commands of the creature who animated it. The animated object lasts until it is reduced to 0 hit points, in which case the patch falls off and the object is destroyed. Once you use the patch, you cannot use it again until the next dawn, and the original object on it is destroyed.
Interesting. It's so niche.
It's very good. Like, it seems like, again, that this is meant very much to be used with the Hat of Conjure Stuffed Animal. Which, for one thing, it might be worth, like, it just seems like you should combine these into one thing, because it feels almost like a Conjure Animal spell with a really elaborate extra step. Unless, I guess, because the patch of animation can be a stuffed animal, unless you get someone to make a life-size stuffed ancient dragon. And I guess it has to be an animal, but it doesn't specify that it has to be a beast.
So here's my kind of thoughts here. For D&D time, I think even the patch of animation is just a little too niche, even for D&D time. The Hat of Conjure Stuffed Animal is great for D&D time.
Yes.
Outside of D&D time, I'm just finding a really hard time mentally putting these together, like coming up with an adventure that this could work in. I'm thinking like maybe a very specific adventure about like a haunted like dollhouse realm, right? Like you go into the haunted house, there's nothing there except up in the attic there's the dollhouse, and as you touch it you are teleported into the dollhouse, right? And that's the adventure, going to this dollhouse dungeon. In that case, like I could see these things maybe coming up there, but even then I think that these would be features on a creature, like of a monster that can animate these things, not necessarily items in their own right. I like the kind of Conjure Stuffed Animals, but yeah, I think the patch of animation that feels like a feature that a monster would have. Like kind of how the tree ant can animate trees, can make animated trees. I think, the creepy doll master could animate the stuffed animals. Does that make sense? Or did I just ramble into oblivion?
No, I understand what you're saying there.
Okay, because sometimes I ramble into oblivion.
People say if you need to hide behind the stuffed animals, you can, and these can be magically told to people. Yeah, I mean, they might be like, I'm sure like this for me seems very campaign dependent. Like if you're telling a story that would use the Hat of Conjure Stuffed Animal and the patch of animation, then awesome. But it also doesn't seem like something that like, you couldn't necessarily throw this into a game without like understanding the context of it. The Hat of Conjure Stuffed Animals maybe a little bit more than the patch of animation.
Yeah, I think the Hat of Conjure Stuffed Animal has, at least in D&D time, a lot of use case. Even outside of D&D time, I could see this being functional. However, I'd probably want to take it more in the direction of your typical common item, right? It has 1d3 charge. You can expend a charge to create a life-sized stuffed animal, right, of a creature, challenge rating, blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean?
I do, yes.
That's kind of the direction I think I would take it, rather than leaning on the Conjure Animal spell, because I could totally see, let's say like in the Forgotten Realms, even, right? You have a wizard in Waterdeep putting on a show for children down by the dockyards or something, and they have this top hat and they tip the hat and they flip it over and tap it a few times, and like a stuffed alligator falls out and the kid's like, whoa, it fell out of your hat. like I could see this being a thing that like a street performer could use in a real D&D setting. Oh god, the patch of animation on the robe of many things. Oh boy, or useful items.
The robe of useful, yes. All right, well that's those are the patch and the hat. Let's look at the double helix spiral sword by Reflecting 10-8. I'm not gonna.
You're on this. This is yours, buddy.
Yeah, I'm not gonna read the whole thing because it's ridiculous. For anyone unfamiliar with the anime Gurren Lagann,
that was me.
This is a reference to that. As you can tell, this item is one of two things. It is a joke item, possible, or two. It could also be like the kind of thing that you give a player on the last session when your game you don't need to worry about your game being broken. As a sample of something pretty good it does, it gives you a +10 to attack and damage rolls. And all of the little things here: do the impossible, see the invisible, touch the untouchable, break the unbreakable. These are all from the little like theme song at the end.
I don't know these things.
Double helix spiral sword is so anime, indeed. Oh my goodness!
Total party chill rating of 34.
Oh, party 34.
Hit my leg.
Oh my goodness! Thank you so much. Good to see you. Welcome all. For anyone coming in right now,
might be in ad hell right now.
Yes. I was gonna say, for anyone coming in right now, hello, Maddie.
Hello, team.
Coming in right now, we're going over homebrew magic items that some people in our community made.
Absolutely. So, Pete, what do we want to say about the double helix Gurren Lagann sword?
The double helix Gurren Lagann sword.
I think that's why we have to call it the full title every time.
The double helix spiral sword is not something that you could put in a game, and you'd never see it published in a D&D time official work, but it made me happy to read it because I watched that anime and I understood the references. And if your campaign's about to end and you want to give them something memorable, this is the kind of thing that you can do, is give them something that's just so unreasonably powerful that they have this moment of feeling like a god towards the end of a campaign.
Double helix Gurren Lagann sword.
And these are my thoughts on the double helix Gurren Lagann sword.
Welcome, Blues Clues, and Exhausted Dragon, and Dysfemist, I can't speak, and Tobias Knight, and I know there are many more of you are lurking along with the raid. Thank you, Blues, for bringing all your pals. Oh, of course, hello, Bubonic One. I know you've been here a little longer, but hello.
Indeed.
Give this the party when they're fighting the massive Uber God from the Ultra Devastation. Wait, from the Ultra Devastation to Hell, and have the wielder die in a glorious way. A blaze of glory.
So we'll take a look at thoughts and prayers. That's the next one that we have here. This is another one from Dude Man.
Yeah, this is for those jumping in. We're reviewing some of the magic items, or actually, any homebrew that players have submitted in our our Discord channel, our Discord server. We have a workshop server where players can submit their own cool homebrew, and that's what we're just talking about now. Giving some constructive feedback and showing everything off, because there's some really great stuff here.
Yeah, if you're interested in homebrew and you like creating things or making stuff, Discord's linked under the stream. We do this pretty much every Sunday, save the first of each week, and we go through and we review people's homebrew, and we talk about the stuff that everyone around the community is making. So if you're like passionate about making homebrew the way that we are, then absolutely show us some of the stuff you've been working on, because we'd love to gain the benefit of your ideas as well. The best way to get better at homebrew is by, looking at it.
By doing it.
Yeah. Getting good
Looks
feedback.
like Chill Pandana sent something into the workshop. We will check that out once we get to the end of this line.
Indeed.
Which actually we're getting really close. So. Pete, what do we got now? We got the thoughts and prayers.
So this was a magic item made by Dune Man. They are gauntlets, and they're rare. These gauntlets are infused with the last thoughts a warrior has, and the prayers one receives at their funeral. When you make an attack with thoughts, it does 1d8 psychic damage, and when you make an attack with prayers, you do 1d8 radiant damage. And they are weapon properties light. So these are gauntlets. So it sounds like these are something that. Oh,
okay. One is thoughts, one is prayers. Okay, yes. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I like the flavoring of that. The one thing I'm not sure about is what are they unarmed strikes? It does need a little bit of clarity in terms of what type of weapon they are. because gauntlets aren't technically like a weapon in 5e, unless I'm mistaken about that.
No, they're not currently. Balooz, thank you for subscribing.
Thank you so much, Balooz. Oh my goodness. Or Maddie Morgs gifted
Maddie Morgs.
1 sub to Balooz Clues. Maddie Morgs.
Oh, Maddie.
You.
But yeah, I think what this needs is just, it's actually like the perfect amount of flavor text. Maybe it's a little clarity in the flavor text, that first sentence, to explain exactly that it is 2 distinct gauntlets and one is thoughts and one is prayers, because it actually took me a hot minute to like realize that the way it was currently written.
Yeah.
And then just a little clarity. Is that an additional 1d8 damage in addition to like whatever normal damage you expect your unarmed strike to do? Is this in addition to one-armed strikes? Looks like you gave it the weapon property of light, which is meant for dual wielding, but it just needs a little bit more clarity here and there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a very cool item.
And the way that you would probably do that phrasing is you would write, thoughts is a light melee weapon that deals, or a light simple or light martial melee weapon that deals 1d8 psychic damage, and prayers is say the same thing about it, except that it deals 1d8 radiant damage. Is probably the best way to phrase that, if that is what the intended design is.
Aren't gauntlets already light? Bubonic One asks. Gauntlets actually aren't items in the on the weapons table, so I don't know. Maybe
they are. I mean, maybe they are literally light, but I don't think they have. They don't have an official like mechanic
the property
rule set for. So.
Yeah. And I see Chill Pandana. I love the idea if the thoughts and prayers were written on the gauntlet's knuckles. Prayers. So the fourth knuckle just has all the rest of the letters.
Let's look at tons of magic dice, Jeremy.
Yeah, so here, the tons of magic dice and the die toss are 2 different spell options that were submitted by Reflected 10.8 and V-Bunny, respectively. There's a bit of conversation going on about this concept and how we could implement it. So here is tons of magic dice. Hopefully you'll be able to read it well. This is taken from D&D Beyond, where Reflected 10.8 made this. Excuse me. And it's a first level spell. It takes 1 action to cast, range of 120 feet, verbal, somatic, and material components. And the material component is a satchel full of dice. Excellent material component there, flavorful already. It is evocation, and it does bludgeoning damage. You conjure 3 glowing dice of magical inclination that rain down from the sky. Each die hits a creature of your choice you can see within range. A die deals 3d6 divided by 3, round down, force damage to its target. The dice all strike simultaneously, and you can direct them to hit 1 creature or several. The dice created by the spell last until dispelled. Okay, so I guess the idea is you conjure magical ethereal or actual physical dice that fall down and strike people, kind of like a magic missile spell. I think that's kind of where this was somewhat inspired from.
Yes. In some ways, this feels a little bit like slightly more convoluted magic missile, with the because each dice deals 3d6 divided by 3.
Yeah, and
which is an odd way of doing it. I don't entirely understand.
By convention, in 5e, if you're going to, because 3d6 or 1d6 is effectively the equivalent of 1d4 plus 1 from the magic missile spell damage. So this is just basically the same damage-wise as magic missile. I would just have it be 1d6. In 5e, you try to avoid having to do fractions if you can possibly help it, just because it just adds another level of complication and math. So, I mean, this is obviously kind of a goofy spell option, right? You conjure magical dice that hit people. You throw a dice at people is what's happening here.
In some ways, to me, tons of magic dice might work better as a reflavor of magic missile, and just say when I use my magic, if like this was the thing that you wanted to do, you might just say, "Hey, my magic dice are my magic missiles are dice that you hurl around."
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely do that. I could also say, right, if you wanted to make this really distinct, because the thing that's really distinct here is the dice are created by the spell last until dispelled, right? They stay. And I think that's kind of supposed to be the implication, is like that they are a permanent thing.
Oh.
Or semi-permanent. If you really wanted to give it that unique flavor that makes it different from Magic Missile, one of the ways you could do that, right, is you could have this. So as a first level spell, when you cast it at a higher spell slot, rather than creating more dice, maybe it increases the damage die from like a D6 to a D8 to a D10 to a D12 as you use higher level spell slots. That might be a fun way to
give it its own kind of vibe.
Yeah, give it its own kind of uniqueness.
It's a cool idea. Okay, so is the idea here that if you keep using the spell over and over again, the dice all go again, stacking on top of itself?
No, I think the idea is you have these dice that you conjured.
So it's just
Speaking of which, I would call this a conjuration spell, not even
having the dice.
Yeah, you need dice. You just need lots of dice. You're a you have to play the goblin race if you're playing this. You have to collect your dice.
And then in that case, yeah, school might be better served as conjuration.
And if you did want to really continue with this concept, I would also recommend defining what the dice are. Are these medium-sized ethereal dice? Are they big, or are they normal dice size? Right? Are they small, tiny dice? I think you need to put a size category on them, and if they're large, you might need to even put an armor class or hit point value for these dice, because if they're medium, your human-sized dice falling out of the sky and bludgeoning people, there are implications of, well, how much do they weigh and all that kind of crap. Just some food for thought moving forward with that, if you were going to revise this guy. And speaking of revising this guy, V-Bunny took a swing. This was by Reflected 10-8, by the way. Thank you, Lance. But V-Bunny made his own kind of take on this called Die Toss.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about Die Toss, Pete?
Yeah, why not? A tiny die with a color of your choice and a number of sides equal appropriate for the spell slot level used to cast this spell appears in your hand. A first level spell slot used to create the spell produces a die with 4 sides. This increases in the number of sides from the die when you upcast the spell. You probably don't need that extra bit of clarity since it's included in the at higher level section as well. The die measures 3/4 of an inch in diameter and weighs an ounce. The die remains there until you toss it or it is crushed. You can attack with the die. When you cast the spell or as an action on a later turn, a creature holding the die can hurl the die at a creature within 60 feet of them. A creature holding the die makes a ranged spell attack using your spellcasting modifiers and spellcasting attack bonus. On a hit, the target takes 1 die force damage, and the die appears in the closest unoccupied space to the target and remains there until it is picked up as an item interaction or until it is crushed. Item interaction technically doesn't exist, so it's just a little confusing to include that language.
Yeah, that is not a mechanical term. Interact with an item is something you can do, but item interaction is not an economy. Common misconception.
A creature holding the die may choose to crush the die. If a creature crushes the die, the creature can roll a die with sides equal to the one produced by the spell and add the number rolled to one ability check or saving throw of its choice that it makes during the turn it crushes the die. All right.
This is too complicated. We've taken the uncomplicated one. We made it too complicated, I think.
There's
We've also missed the material component, which was very cool.
The at higher levels thing here is actually kind of what you were saying, Jeremy, where it increases the type of die, which is, I think, cool. I think there's maybe, rather than phrasing when you cast it at this level, it does this, you could probably just phrase that when you cast the spell using a spell slot of 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, or 6th level, the die has...
The damage die increases to blah, blah, blah.
4, 6, 8, 7, or 4, 6, 8, 12, 20, respectively. Would be a kind of a brisker way to get that through. Some of this needs to be pared down, and the core thing here is, I kind of like what you're getting at, where it's you throw the die at people. I know Switch would probably like that. That's a Galanodal classic move. But I can kind of see it kind of almost like a better Magic Stone, a more powerful version of the Magic Stone spell that you can give to other people. Thing about the ability checks, you probably don't want that on there. It kind of crunches on a lot of Bard flavor in a lot of way.
Well, beyond that, that seems like it'd be pretty good for a first level spell anyway.
Yeah. It's also very powerful. Adding abilities, adding a dice to a saving throw, and just kind of holding on to that for a long time. It lets you kind of. I mean, technically, I think.
Yeah.
This just lets you stack it. This just lets you cast a bunch of first level spells to get a bunch of dice you could crush to then add later on.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of complication here, and even then we're still lacking on like how long do they last. There's still just even more questions that have been prompted. I think you're trying to just do a little too much in here.
Yeah. So there's definitely interesting stuff in there. I want to look at another spell actually.
I agree with Farku. Dice could just be reflavors of Magic Stone, which is a fun cantrip.
Yes, from Farku there. I'm going to look now to another spell from V-Bunny called Hydraulic Blast that V-Bunny put out. So do you want to check this guy out next?
Yeah, Pete, I got him right open.
Oh, wonderful. Hydraulic Blast is a second level evocation spell. It has a casting time of an action, a range of self with a 15-foot cone, deals force damage. It's a attacker save is a dex save. It has duration of 1 minute. Interesting. All right,
the dice flavor of Melts Minute Meteors. I would like that as well.
That's also very cool. A blast of water sweeps out from you. When you cast this spell and as an action on each of your turns for the duration, each creature in a 15-foot cone originating from you must make a dexterity saving throw. On a failed save, a creature takes 3d8 force damage and is pushed 10 feet away from you. On a successful save, the creature takes half as much damage and isn't pushed 10 feet away. Objects that are completely within the area of effect are automatically pushed 10 feet away from you by the spell's effect. Okay.
This is a really interesting one.
So this is sort of a dragon's breath for water, which I'm actually very...
Well, it's a dragon, like dragon's breath, right, is to burning hands as this is to thunder wave.
That is true, but it's with water, which I'm actually really into, because like making and hitting people with water is a thing that I think is a pretty iconic classic magical move. And there's not a lot of options for that there's not a lot of options for that pretty much anywhere. You can do tsunami eventually or tidal wave a little bit further down the road, but those are kind of sometimes more high impact, and just a big blast of water is something that's cool. My first thinking on this, my first takeaway is it seems to me like this should be bludgeoning damage and not force damage.
Yeah, it should be bludgeoning damage. And I see V-Bunny was saying it does 4d4 damage in his new iteration, and it increases by 2d4 every spell slot. That scaling is way too powerful at 2d4 per spell slot past second level. That would be one of the most powerful spells in the game if you did it that way, Bunny. I don't think you could actually do it. I don't understand why we're not just using the same kind of damage as Thunderwave. It pushes just like Thunderwave. It's a dex save, which is a little different from Thunderwave, but whatever, it's comparable. 15-foot cone, just like Thunderwave. Like, I guess it's a cone for the cube.
Thunderwave's a cube, but it's similar.
Comparable range. Yeah, I mean, I feel like this should just be 2d8 and increases by a d8 every time. This would still be I would cast this at 5th level and use my 5d8 Thunderwaves every turn. That sounds great. That's like a blast to me. Yeah,
Thunderwave is kind of like it's a spell that sometimes feels a little bit bad to use because it kind of low impact at those early levels, and you want a lot of the time just something that does a lot of damage. But doing it every turn and just having it, that sounds really fun.
Well, a first level spell is pretty solid, actually. 2d8 and an area of effect.
It has the pushback. Two points of note I would like to make here. The first is that objects completely within the area of effect are automatically pushed 10 feet away. I don't think you want that in there. It should be if you fail the save.
Well, Thunderwave has very similar text, right? Unsecured objects that are completely within the area of effect are automatically pushed 10 feet away. Yeah, I'm wondering why did you get rid of unsecured? Why'd you get rid of that? That's like a very important keyword in that statement.
It needs that for sure. Also, as a flavor note for me, this doesn't feel like a hydraulic... Like, it feels like you need a name other than Hydraulic Blast, because when I hear Hydraulic Blast, I think, I shoot out a big blast of water, but I don't think
fire hydrant.
I don't think it keeps going. if that makes sense. I think of blast as a very it happens and it's done, rather than you kind of going into this fire hydrant mode. But that's like a minor note, and if someone liked the flavor, like if you like the flavor of hydraulic blast, then who am I?
Yeah, I don't know. I still think you should try and stick back to the Thunderwave conventions because it is so similar to the comparison between Dragon's Breath and Burning Hands. I really think you should stick closer to the Thunderwave. Adding more damage onto here. This is just a better take on that. And I don't know.
Actually, one more thing for me also, because you're being physically pushed backwards, this feels like it almost might be better served as a strength saving throw, too.
I think you're right, actually. That's a very good point.
But
strength
again,
would be much better.
These are kind of flavor points in senses, and I actually do really like the flavor of this, too.
Ooh.
Like I was saying, I like there being more water-based spells. I think it's cool.
Blood added an awesome concept. It should put out non-magical flames in the area of the spell. I think that would be very cool.
44 is technically, it looks equal to it, but the average is statistically a little bit higher on that.
Yeah, it is on average a little bit better.
Yep.
But either way, I still think it'd be better to have the 2d8s than the 4d4s personally. D4s are... I know you're talking about minimum damage, V-Bunny, or I'm sorry, Jugs was saying. And again, Jugs, I'm so sorry. D. Hodges, I don't know. I'm so sorry if I can't say your name right. I'm bad. But yeah, the minimum damage is different. I don't know. I very much like the D8s. Well, no, V-Bunny, it's better than a first level spell because you get unlimited of these over a 1 minute range. Like, you get to use it over and over.
Yeah, the thing that you're upgrading is that you get to keep doing it.
Yeah, I mean, compare it to Dragon's Breath and Burning Hands. The comparison should be apples to apples there.
I completely misread the objects thing. When we first read it, I thought it was saying creatures within the area of effect. And I was like, that just means everyone always gets knocked back.
But I really, really like Blood Deuce's idea of dispelling non-magical or putting out non-magical fire. That's also very flavorful, yeah. Instead of a 300-foot blast of sound, right? It puts out the fires.
But that's a very cool spell.
Yeah, it's very neat. I really like that. And like Pete was saying, we need more of these elemental magics in 5e. It's one of the things that's really lacking.
And particularly water gets a shaft because everything's cold and not water. But next we have actually one more here. We have Flaming Beetle Boots from Sword Co. here, or actually two more. This is a pair of boots made by Sword. Want to take this one, Jeremy?
Yeah! These are Fable tier items, i.e. rare. These boots were created from the chitin of a rare magma beetle. Though the shells have a pleasant iridescent sheen, the edges seem to glow red hot as if magma was flowing between the cracks. Beautiful little bit of flavor there, Sword.
Nice.
That is exactly the amount of flavor you want on a magic item like that. When making an unarmed strike with these boots, flames burst out, doing an additional 1d4 fire damage. Once per day, you can use the magical flames in these boots to perform a flaming jump kick that burns a target for 1d4 fire damage at the start of each of their turns. But the effect ends after combat. In addition, the boots also provide protection from anything the hot boots may come in contact with, such as lava, in and up to the top of the boots. And then some more flavor. These boots were once part of a set wielded by a brave young man who had to face a mighty red dragon. However, the magma beetles' armor were created from just happening the dragon's favorite food, and the young man was eaten in one mighty chomp from the shins up.
I like that cute little story. Sword, you always have nice little stories at the end of your stuff, and I love that.
I do as well.
So do you want to start, or would you like me to?
Yeah, well, I think from the start, I think the extra 1d4 fire damage works really well. Adding to unarmed strikes is nice, right? This is something to give monks specifically a cool item, which, God forbid, we give monks a cool magic item.
I think rare is correct.
Yeah, rare is definitely correct. Now, this once per day flaming jump kick, I get it, but the mechanics probably need to be revised on this guy. Yeah. I think once per day, when you would hit a creature by using an attack made with these boots, you can cause them to ignite. They suffer 1d4 fire damage at the end of their turns and can roll. Yeah, they can take their action to make a check to put the fire out.
Yeah, just
I think is the way you want to do that.
Some of the same things we were talking about with that fighter subclass earlier, actually, with it just needs to be clear how
unsavable fire damage works. Who?
Yeah, that's also true.
Farku was saying, isn't Flame Tongue rare? That's true, Farku, but Flame Tongue is very much an exception among rare items. Few of them have the firepower that Flame Tongue has.
Flame Tongue probably shouldn't be a rare item, but it is. And the last one here that you see here is...
I like V-Bunny's concept. I kicked him in the shins and run away. I'm sorry, go ahead, Pete.
Last one here is from Reddit, which I always grab stuff from Reddit, but then we never have time, and I'd rather do the stuff that you guys have been posting in the workshop while we're doing. So
did you see Chill Pandana's thing in the chat, Pete?
Yeah, I'm going to go and grab that now. I haven't had the opportunity to do so, but...
Is this Patreon post?
Oh, yeah, don't worry about that.
I don't click that.
That was the thing from Reddit that I was going to look at, but...
We got a player on us thing. Stuff.
I want to point out this great... this is just a delightful interaction I saw. Farku put together the suit of the hero. I see you hanging out, Farku, which was another anime reference item. It's One Punch Man. You got a suit and cape. Unknown potential. You're immune to all damage and conditions, and any damage you do may reduce the target hit points to 0. And then it's cursed. It makes you bald and you have financial troubles, which is, again, a reference to the anime. But there was a great comment here from from Lance and Farku in exchange. Seems a little weak. You should have it reduce the target's HP to -100 to ensure you don't have to deal with anything that gets death saving throws. Farku goes, then perhaps you always deal double your target's hit point maximum. Lance Silverblood, there we go. That's clean. And that was a great example of positive and constructive feedback because Lance and Farku got this item very quickly to exactly where it was supposed to be, which is non-usable in a campaign, but exactly what One Punch Man is. This item, I would say my only real thought is it should probably require attunement.
Okay, Pete.
That was a little joke.
Chill Pandana was saying, sorry, it's a download. I don't know how to change it to a proper PDF. You don't have to put it on a proper PDF or anything, Chill. I mean, if it's a Google Doc or anything like that, you can just link to the doc if you'd like.
And Jeremy, there's a couple of... I'm going to get... Oh, wait, I don't see... Do you know... Oh, okay, I see it now.
Shouldn't the curse also make you always bored? I don't know.
Do you want to toss up... do you want to toss up that Warlock archetype for us right now?
What Warlock archetype, Pete?
The one that was just posted by Chill Pandana.
Sure. Let me just navigate OBS and everything else, Pete.
That's on the Discord, I mean. If you're just using a screen capture, right? Or do you need them on this doc?
You got to give me a link, Pete. You got to give me a link. So I'm trying to keep up with chat while you're looking at all this stuff.
All right, here we go.
You throw me a link and I will put it up.
This is the Leprechaun by Coldspark first.
Oh, and GM Binder. So for those interested, GM Binder is a fun web application that lets you create really nice looking homebrew content like this really easily. We don't use it for our stuff, but that's because we're neurotic. This is a really, really good direction for folks who want to create really nice looking content with ease. Let's talk about this Leprechaun, Pete. You want me to start, or do you want to take a jump at it?
Take it away for me.
Okay.
All right. I got the other thing up there for next too. Great.
I see Coldspark already got it for me in the chat. Thank you, Coldspark. The Leprechaun. So obviously this doesn't have a lot of flavor yet. This is really just about the mechanics of the Leprechaun.
Yeah,
Leprechaun names. Leprechauns have similar names to gnomes. They typically take a surname of a father or grandfather's name prefixed with either O or Mac. The might be a tad bit offensive for some folks. So I might hesitate a little bit, but at the same time, it is a leprechaun, so I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, a little questionable in that regard, but
otherwise, let's jump onto these mechanics, Pete. You want to take the first swing?
Well, you'll be thinking that I'll be looking at this leprechaun then, will you, Jeremy? Well, I'll tell you that they get an ability score increase. Their charisma score increases by 2.
Whatever.
And the dexterity score increases by 1. I was just doing my Irie, my man.
I know.
Leprechauns mature slightly faster than... So charisma +2, dex +1. Leprechauns mature slightly faster than humans, reaching maturity at 14 and living for about 150 years. Alignment, most leprechauns are chaotic, but they have no significant tendency towards good or evil. Size, their size is small. Speed, their base walking speed is 25 feet, naturally. They have Fey ancestry, so they have advantage on charms and things of the like. And then here we have, this is where they're starting to get some spicier ones, it looks like. So Rainbow's Bounty. And it looks like these are A or B. I don't know if these are different options for the same thing, or if you're thinking that, like, these are 2 different ideas you had for what Rainbow's Bounty could be. So if you want to...
That might become clear as we go, though.
Yeah, sure. So Rainbow's Bounty A. Once per day, you may create a number of gold pieces equal to 5 times your charisma modifier. Rainbow's Bounty B. As a bonus action, you may create a number of gold pieces equal to your character's level. You may do this a number of times equal to your charisma modifier, minimum of once. Or all versions...
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so that's an either one. And then all versions, these gold pieces are illusory and disappear after 1 hour. A creature may use its action to inspect the coins and must succeed on an investigation check to discern their illusory nature. The DC for this check is 8, plus your charisma modifier, plus your proficiency bonus. And then the Appraiser's Eye. You may spend 1 minute examining a non-magical object you can hold in your hands. When you do, you determine the value of the object. Trickster's Guile. You have proficiency in the deception skill, which definitely makes sense for the leprechaun as well. And then you read Common and Sylvan.
I really like this.
I do as well.
I'm trying to think. Looking at this guy, I think there's room for a little more oomph. Appraiser's Eye is very fun. It's very flavorful, but it's definitely not load-bearing. It's what we call a ribbon, right? It's just for fulfilling the fantasy of the leprechaun, right? Of knowing the value of things.
And honestly, for me, Appraiser's Eye feels like it might be, since it's on a player race, it might be better suited as you have advantage on a certain, like, investigation intelligence checks made to determine the value of an object.
Yeah, what I'm seeing here, especially with Rainbow's Bounty, right, is I'm seeing an interesting, actually this is interesting because once per day versus, and number of times equals charisma modifier. Okay. What might be an interesting direction to take with this Cold Spark, and I don't know if this is the right direction, but it's a different direction that might work, is if you made Rainbow's Bounty into like a spell, like a level 1 spell that is specific for this class, and then you could take the classic player race spellcasting template that like the Tiefling has, right? They get a level 1 spell, they get a level 2 spell, or a level 1 spell upcast to level 2, and then we'll get another spell at a later level. That might be a direction to take here, because that way you could roll Appraiser's Eye into here, right? They get the Identify spell at 2nd level. When they use Identify spell, they also learn the approximate value of the object, right? That could be an interesting way to tie this in. I don't know if that's necessary, but that's just what my immediately went to. I think the charisma modifier is a bit funky on a race. It's definitely against convention for a race.
Yeah, I see what you're saying on that. Yeah, I don't know. It's a little bit questionable, and I definitely think it could use a little bit more power.
Yeah.
For me, the thing again, like I mentioned, should the leprechaun just be a gnome subrace? I don't think so, Farfel. I think there's room for a whole leprechaun race because they're not gnomes. They're their own thing. And maybe that's my bias of caring very deeply about the lore of leprechauns. If this is something that like I really like in 5e, or not in 5e, but in Dungeons and Dragons and in mythology and fantasy, like I've made a study of the leprechaun. So I feel like it's worthwhile having its own race.
Well, and what could be interesting, because you are playing this, right, as your own, because you're making this outside of like a player's handbook or something, you could do some really interesting stuff with this since it's homebrew, right? If you went that spell slot option, right, at 5th level, they would get so at 1st level, right, they'd know the thaumaturgy, instead of thaumaturgy cantrip, maybe that's Rainbow's Bounty, right? They have some cool thing with that. And then at 3rd level, they get the Identify spell, and it gets this extra special boost on it from Appraiser's Eye. And then at 5th level, you could actually maybe look at the Acquisitions Incorporated book, because there are some really fun spells like Distort Value, which is a neat, or Incite Greed, that you could pull out and put on this subrace that I think would actually make a lot of sense on a leprechaun, as opposed to some other things. I don't know if you're familiar with the Acquisition Incorporated book, but there are a couple of fun low-level spell options for that kind of stuff. Could be very neat.
A ribbon that I had on my original leprechaun that I'd like to share. If I can find it and track it down, I'll post it in the workshop you guys can look at too. But a ribbon I had on mine that I loved was you could cast the Locate Object spell for free using a nearby rainbow as the material component. So you could siphon off a rainbow to cast Locate Object, which I thought was a very cool thing.
Yeah, but I like these a lot. I mean, it's definitely a good direction. I like where you're going off the bat. You've hit the base stuff right on the nail on the head, right? It needs charisma. It probably needs dexterity, but I could even see it maybe with wisdom would be interesting.
Yeah, both are reasonable.
I mean, you got the Fey ancestry, you got the speed. I wonder almost if one of the things where you could give the leprechaun more power is just have that be Fey. Like, I think there's a centaur, I think they went through with giving that the Fey property, but I'm not sure.
I think
Ravnica.
I think they're considered Fey, but I think they might also be considered...
Yeah. They're Fey rather than humanoid, which is actually pretty powerful. It gives you a lot of extra protections that you might not realize. Hold person, for example, can't affect you. Charm person, a lot of those charming effects you're just immune to if you're Fey. That might be an interesting way to
Blake,
give this a little more.
Centaur playable race are considered humanoids. So maybe they dialed that back or something. I know there was.
I don't believe they are in Guildmaster Guide to Ravnica.
Well, that's
but that's the
thing if someone wants to look it up. Let's look last but not least at this Wandering Spirit Warlock archetype. The formatting is all messed up because I had to copy and paste it from a PDF. But
is there a PDF?
Yeah, it's in the Discord, but I couldn't get a link to it because it's in the Discord. If you want to hop on the Discord and grab the PDF,
where is it? You can start, and I will.
It's a little bit. It's a little bit up from the bottom. It's not that far. You should see it pretty quick on my workshop.
Yeah.
So this is the Warlock archetype, Wandering Spirit. The Warlock, by making a pact with a lingering spirit that clings to its last remaining essence, allowing the spirit to enter the Warlock's body, and by this pact does both the Warlock's and the spirit's life essence, now harbored within the same mortal coil, grow simultaneously. Okay, so this is like it's almost like a possessed sort of thing. The shape of the spirit beyond death for this pact may vary and very well may be that of another human or an animal. This ancient pact is only conducted when either the spirit or the will of the Warlock wishes to live on near an untimely end. Oh, sorry, I got thrown off by the way it's formatted here. Let me look at it now upon the screen where it's easier to read and not in this thing. Speak with your dungeon master with what the spirit form is beforehand and during character creation. So this is sort of like a warlock that's been possessed by a spirit of some kind. I think that's kind of a cool angle to take. Go into these spells, Jeremy.
Yeah, so once again, expanded spell list. These are spells the Warlock can pick, but hopefully or should not already have. And we've got Fog Cloud / False Life. Nice two to start off. We have Blur and Phantasmal Force. Also make a lot of sense. Though I think Blur is already a Warlock spell. So that's something to consider. When you're doing expanded spell list for Warlocks, you only pick spells that are not already on the Warlock spell list. These are just ones you get to choose in addition to the normal Warlock spell list. You don't just get them. Blink and Gaseous Form are two more. Banishment and Dimension Door, and Anti-Life Shell and Mislead. Very nice. Excuse me. And yeah, again, you just want to just double check to make sure these are non-Warlock spells. Manifest Spirit is the first level feature besides Expand Spell List. Starting at first level, the Warlock gains the ability to call upon the form of the spirit that now inhabits their body and take an aspect of the spirit's form or prowess for themselves. The following is what this feature may be used. For the duration, taking the physical attribute of spirit form for your own, replacing your strength, dexterity, or constitution for the statistics of the spirit for the duration. Or taking a specific superior attribute of the spirit's form for yourself. As an example of this, if the spirit form happens to be that of the miniature rat, the Warlock may acquire the rat's tail, claws, or teeth, perhaps taking the rat's eyes, gaining dark vision, and the spirit had before it had died for the duration of this feature. The duration of this feature is a minute times the Warlock's level. Interesting. I get where you were going for this. I think if you're going to have as open-ended features as these might be, I think what you might need to do is you might want to, under shape of the spirit, you might want to make a kind of curated list of spirits.
Yeah.
Are these humanoid spirits or are these animal spirits? And that way we know what they're going to be getting out of here. Because, I could see, just with the open-endedness, some player being like, yes, my spirit, it's a Tarask.
Yeah, of course, is the first.
My reflective armor. And right now, I mean, that is canon here. So there just needs to be a little more definition on this feature. But it's a very interesting concept. I really like the idea of being able to borrow, especially this special features, being able to borrow the features of this spirit. That sounds very cool to me.
Yeah, and that's definitely a flavor that works really well with the world. It's like a very unconventional type of patron, where the patron, it's almost like a blending of sorcerer and warlock flavor here, where the patron is kind of innate in you, and you're like tapping into their power more physically. It's cool.
Yeah, and I see what you were saying, Chill Pendana. This is why I say talk to your DM. That's true, but part of the important part of having the more defined rules in the subclass, right, is so that when there is an argument, like if the player says, well, I want mine to be a T-Rex, and the DM says, you can't have a T-Rex. You can't have 26 strength at first level. You're not allowed to do that. And there's an argument. That's what we need. You need the subclass to fall back on. Yeah, exactly. So I think it definitely will need a little more framework. You want to talk about no vacancy, Pete?
Yes, I like no vacancy a lot. Starting at first level, the Warlock, now having a spirit harbored in their mortal coil, can no longer be possessed by other entities that may wish to take over the Warlock's body for themselves. That's really flavorful. It's really cute. I think there's probably a way to phrase that that's a little bit different, because possessed isn't technically a keyword in 5e. So that's just, it's obvious what it does. Like, I completely understand it. A ghost can't use its possession feature on you, for example. But it just needs to be coded in a way that's a little bit more, again, in the convention of 5e.
And along that same line, I'm wondering, was your intention to also block spells like Dominate Person and comparable magic? If it was, that needs to be a little more clear, because right now it seems like it only affects the possession feature of ghosts and other similar creatures.
And I think that is the intent.
If that's the intent, I mean, you're on.
If
also very flavorful name.
Yeah, for sure. If it was that thing where it's also charm, I said, okay, no, that's later on. Yeah, so That's the kind of thing that seems like you get eventually with this. So cool. Let's look at the next feature. Expelled Spirit. Starting at 6th level, through the progression of your ability to control and understand both your own and your spirit's life energy, the spirit can now manifest fully into the material world as a ghost. The spirit statistics are that of the creature its form has taken while its past life, with the following differences. It has a flying speed. It gains resistance to elemental damages and then bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing. It gains immunity to cold, poison, and necrotic damage. It gains the ethereal sight and incorporeal movement features of the ghost. Also can, as an attack action with Withering Touch, deal 4d6 plus charisma modifier necrotic damage, and that's based on your to hit. The spirit's HP is half of the warlock's total, and if the spirit's HP goes down to 0, the spirit will recoil and return to the warlock's body, dealing the warlock half of the spirit's total damage. Interesting. Unresistible. All right.
There's a lot going on here.
Yes. That is my first instinct. There's a lot to evaluate, but my first instinct is that's probably too powerful of a familiar or kind of an ally to be able to summon. Also, there are going to be times where that, like, the warlock spirit comes back and it deals damage to you is going to be kind of frustrating. So those are the first two things that I can think of that might be a little bit unsatisfying to play with this. I might go in a direction where the spirit's maybe a little bit weaker and doesn't necessarily hearken so much unto, like, the ghost, for example. Or if you want to use the ghost as a block, you might be better off almost just using the ghost as a block rather than kind of taking and grabbing bits and pieces.
Power perspective, one of the most powerful warlocks in the game, the Hexblade Warlock subclass, it has a very conditional feature at level 6 that lets it create a specter. It has to kill a humanoid and then it can create a specter. So it's not like, it's a pretty hard to use feature in practice in games. And even though the specter is a challenge rating 1 monster, and it's hard for them to make it. This is a challenge rating 4 monster, the ghost, plus a bunch of other features. This is just very, very, very powerful. You're going to need to take this down many, many notches.
In the same manner that there was Jeremy was saying earlier that maybe you need a list of ways that your spirit can manifest, you might also need a list of spirits you can manifest. And maybe that list is like, if you want it to be beasts, maybe it's just like beasts or humanoids of less than this level. And then maybe they have the incorporeal movement feature or, something like that. Like,
I would very much recommend against the incorporeal movement feature, just for the purpose of, especially if you can communicate with this. The one thing about the Spectre, which the other warlock can make, is it has incorporeal movement, but you can't communicate with it because it can't speak. This one is scary because you can communicate with this thing. At least I believe you can, from what I understand of the class so far. And being able to just phase through all the walls in the dungeon and scout ahead and then know everything, that's going to piss off a lot of dungeon masters. So I'm not sure that's necessarily a go-to here. I was going to say, if you want to keep this feature on the class, you might be able to fit this as a much higher level ability.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because incorporeal movement seems like something that's pretty iconic to a ghost, and having that seems like something that this class would really like to be able to play around with. And maybe that is an issue of finding the right spot to do it. Also, I don't know if that's as much of a problem as you're saying initially.
Potentially.
I guess it could be, but also keep in mind
the bigger issue is that it's too strong for 6 level.
Yeah, it's overall too strong. It's not invisible though, so it's like, for example, you go into a Roman scout and then you find out that there's a dragon there and your spirit dies and you take half its damage, which again cycles back into some of the other things too. But that's just some rough thoughts on this feature. Want to take Overflowing Spirit, Jeremy?
Yeah, so at 11th level, the Warlock soul has become empowered to a point that gives the Warlock the following benefits as long as the Warlock's hit points is 50% or above. It's immune to magical charm effects. At will, the Warlock can begin to float and gain the fly speed equivalent to their movement speed. They can breathe underwater. The Warlock who has reached this point within their life, while the pact has been active, has finally understood the nature of the link between the material world and the ethereal world. Okay, I get what you're saying there. I think the 50% or above, I'm not sure necessarily what flavor reason that was for that. Do I keep saying 11th level? I'm sorry, everybody. I'm sorry. I'm bad. I'm not sure what the flavor reason is for 50% or above. Maybe about the expelled spirits thing. I'm not sure. But I could see this feeling really. It's like, yes, I'm flying. I get hit once. I get crit. Oh, I fall to my death.
Yeah, that's
feeling bad.
This seems like the kind of thing. Also, it's note taking. It feels like sometimes it's just gonna be kind of annoying. Like you have at a higher level, let's say you have I have 77 hit points. So if I'm below 30, if I'm below 33, then I have it, but I don't know it's rounded down, and it's like I see I did that math so bad, and that's the point I'm getting at, is that it's some note keeping that's probably better off just being a flat ability. Also, again, there's another thing. There's kind of a lot going on here, which is, I think some of it was the idea. The drawback was you can do so much because has the health caveat on it, but that might not be playable in a lot of ways.
Yeah, that might have issues with that playability aspect that we have on our rubric. Even if it is closer to balanced. That being said, this might have some balance issues too. I don't know.
It's balanced in a very. It's just balanced in a very feast or famine kind of. Sometimes it's really good when you're not getting hit, and then sometimes you get dunked, which is generally a thing to shy away from if you can.
Yeah. As a general note, if you look at the other Warlock subclasses, the Fiend Warlock gets resistance to a damage type that you choose. The Old One Warlock gets resistance to psychic damage and can reflect psychic damage at enemies. And the Hexblade Warlock gets to dodge certain attacks with its armor of hexes. All of the other almost all the other Warlocks get features that defend them at 10th level. And you can definitely go with this level 10 feature. You can break the mold, as we showed with our Warlock subclass earlier. And I think it's actually pretty flavorful for this one with the flight. So maybe this is actually fine.
Yeah, just for me, it's just the immunity to charm and the flight at the same time just seems a bit.
It might be a bit much.
A touch much, but.
Well, let's talk about that level 14 feat. Level 14 feature, Pete.
So starting at level 14, the Warlock can now expel their own soul from their body, taking the form of an ethereal being. While in this form, the corporeal body is now in control of the spirit that the pact has been made with. Now in control of the spirit. So the spirit takes over your body while you're in this expelled mode. While in this form, the Warlock loses all material possessions except for any attuned magical items that the Warlock has been attuned to. On this form, they gain the following benefits. 40 feet flying speed and can float. The resistances referred to before and immunities referred to before. Ethereal sight and incorporeal movement features. And the Warlock's HP in this form is the HP that it had before coming in incorporeal spirit. And if either the Warlock or the spirit is in control of the Warlock's body, it goes down to 0. They'll be forced back into their body. And if their original body, now under control of the spirit, is under 50% max, the Warlock returns to their body unconscious. Okay. So I kind of see what your overarching, seeing this kind of capstone here, you can kind of see what the overarching plan for this subclass is.
I actually think it's a pretty cool concept for the 14th level.
Yeah, I think it's a very cool idea. I think my broad strokes opinion on how all of this lines up, it just feels like a little bit kind of convoluted in how it works.
It's a little complicated, I think, is what we're getting around to.
Yeah, I think that you could do a lot of what you're trying to do here with simpler features, things like, you can cast an etherealness spell on yourself while in this form. you gain a couple extra benefits and stuff like that without all of like the details of how you move back and forth. And instead of like specifying, it might need some details on this is like what the spirit does in your body. For example, things like
it's unclear about what the spirit can do.
Yep. So I really like the direction, and you kind of basically getting to leave your body behind and become a ghost while your patron takes over for a little while, is really cool and really flavorful for this. It just needs a little work on. It just needs to be better implemented, like mechanically in that way.
I think the direction I would take, rather than using like the etherealness spell, I think I would keep a lot of what you have down here, right? You gain these resistances, you gain this stuff. Sometimes players like just getting a bullet point list of, I get this cool thing and this cool thing and that cool thing. But I think what might be an easier direction to run, rather than your body staying there, you could say your body, you assume an ethereal form, right? Your body becomes this thing. That might be a more interesting way to, not more interesting, but an easier way to have to deal with it, rather than, all right, your spirit's going to take over your body. It's just, no, you and your spirit, just your body just becomes ethereal, right? With your spirit, you become one.
Anyway,
that's my kind of thought.
I think you're going in a really cool direction here. I like the idea of this. Like I said, it feels almost to me like a half sorcerer, half warlock, where your patron is inherent to you. That's a vibe that no other warlock does. And I don't know. I think it works as a flavor. So I'd be really excited to see. I'll work on it. Thanks for the input. Yeah, of course. I'd be really excited to see what work you end up doing with it and where it kind of ends up.
And that's exactly the concept that we're kind of shooting for here with these, right? Does this tick the two boxes that it needs to check to be a good direction to keep moving? Is there space for this in 5th edition D&D? I think there absolutely is, right? A warlock that gains its power from the spirit that it is bonded with, that doesn't exist really. I mean, there's the undying warlock, but not really at all. So there's definitely space, and then the flavor is very cool. So once you tick those two boxes, it's just a matter of getting the balance, the playability, and the design in order. And so really, I would keep with your concept. I would not change that a bit, because that's what really makes it special. It's just reeling in those other boys and getting those wild, rowdy boys in order.
That's it. Thanks so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you very much, Chill Pandana, for sharing.
And I'd like to thank not just Chill Pandana, but I would like to thank everyone who shared something tonight.
Nice.
Which was my way of saying, for real, guys, thank you so much. Jeremy is just scrolling up and down on the page right now, but it's 10 pages of content that you guys, some of those are links to other content that has its own pages. That's so much stuff that you guys put together for us to look at and talk about tonight. And I really appreciate you guys giving us the opportunity to look at all your ideas and be inspired by your creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is our honor to be able to look at these cool ideas and just feed off of this inspiration, because I can tell you there's quite a few things that we saw today that made me immediately think, man, I wonder if I could make this now.
Yeah,
right?
I had a couple too, for sure.
It's inspiration feeding inspiration. And Chill Pandana, no problem, says, no problem, thanks for professional input. Chill, we are not professionals. Don't get me wrong, we appreciate that you like what we're doing. But our opinions are just as valid as anyone else's, Yep,
they are exactly that. They are our opinions.
We might be a tad bit more articulate, or less articulate in my case sometimes, but...
Yeah, we've spent a lot of time doing exactly this, reviewing homebrew stuff, but anytime, please don't think of our words as gospel. If you think, Farkas says, yeah, I'm the professional, so if you hear us say something, you're like, no, I don't think that's true. I think that this is balanced for this reason. Please do that, because we have a lot that we can learn in that regard too. So.
Yeah, we're always learning. I mean, just for an example, right? I mean, when the Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide came out several years back now for 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, it's a very infrequently used book. You may not have even heard of it, but it is an official product for 5e. It had a subclass in there for the barbarian called the Battle Rager. It was a dwarf barbarian who puts on spiked armor and then just grapples people. And that's the whole point of the subclass. And I looked at that and I said, man, this sucks. This is bad. I never want to play this. That's exactly what I said, trash. But, you know, the other day I went and looked at it again because I have a friend who's playing the Battle Rager subclass. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, wow, you know, this really isn't too bad. You get 5 temporary hit points at the start of each of your turn, or is it 5? You get some number of temp hit points every turn, which for the barbarian, that is basically doubled because you're raging. You just take half damage from everything. It's temporary hit points equal to your Constitution modifier. So technically they could be even higher than 5 if you got lucky. Got some great magic stuff. But I was reading, I was just thinking, wow, this really isn't too bad. I mean, it's not as powerful as probably the bear totem, but hey, a bonus act, yeah, like Blood's saying, right? Battle Rager is a bonus action dash, grappling bonuses. They gain these 10 hit points all the time. And, you know, I took another look at it and I thought, wow, I've come a long way. I used to think this sucked, but this is actually not too bad.
Jeremy, I remember when you first started running 5e, the only thing that you banned and said wasn't okay to use was the light cantrip. Because you were like,
the light cantrip still.
You were like, oh, light cantrip, this completely ruins darkness. Which
hate the light cantrip.
Jeremy, the light cantrip is one of the coolest cantrips in 5e.
I was coming out of 4th edition with sun rods, all right? You don't know what light is until you have to deal with sun rods.
Anyway. I know that the light cantrip is dope. Do you actually still not like the light cantrip?
Yeah, no, I don't. No one uses it in D&D time. I love it. It's great.
Oh my god, I love the light cantrip. I think it's one of the coolest spells in the game.
It's so good. Oh, Blood misses sun rods. Blood deuce. Sun rods are terrible. I'm glad they're gone.
Jeremy, what do you got against the light cantrip, dude?
No, Pete, I don't have too much against light cantrip. I hate sun rods.
Oh, well then.
Thank you, Farful. Sun rods are kind of fucked. They're bad. Get rid of them.
What,
they shed bright light for like 200 feet, Pete. 200 feet.
Yeah, I've run sun rods before in a game because the player was like, can I have a sun rod from 4E? And I was like, yeah, sure, you can go buy one. Because they were going underwater and they needed a light underwater and they couldn't use torches. So,
well, yeah, every so often having something like that is totally fine. But when they're just always there, anyway.
But I didn't even know I was giving them, and I don't think it was a 200-foot radius that I said it had. That's a lot of light. All right, well, that's the show. A weird note to end on. I love you all, and I really appreciate you guys hanging out and joining us tonight. Again, thank you so much to everyone who contributed and shared their work. If you watched tonight and you were inspired by anything that you saw, or you have a new idea, or you have an old idea that you haven't gotten around yet to writing down, if you decide to do so, please post it in our workshop underneath. It's on channel on our Discord, which is linked underneath the stream here.
Or I put a link in chat for those of you who can't find the Twitchy links below.
And we'll discuss it on Sunday, a week from today, on the next Fantasy Labs, which will be a lot of fun. We're here every Sunday, but the first Sunday of each month, and we are going to be doing more homebrew stuff.
Absolutely.
The road goes ever on and on. I can't wait to see what you guys have for us next time.
Yeah. And of course, if you want to learn about the other stuff we do on this channel, every Friday we run a show called Pete and Jeremy's D&D Time, where we run 3 short one-shot adventures featuring our viewers. That's you guys in the chat. They're a lot of fun. They are non-contiguous for the most part, so they're all episodic in nature. And it's a great low, what do you call it? Low commitment way to play some Dungeons and Dragons in a goofy, lighthearted, and fun kind of setting. So if that sounds fun to you, which it probably does because you're here right now watching Dungeons and Dragons stuff, you should check out our website, dndtime.stream, and jump on our Discord, link in the chat, to learn more about what we do. Thanks for watching, guys.
Yeah,
Love
thanks
you
so
all.
much.
And thank you to Total Party Chill for the raid. I really appreciate you sending your pals over here to check out what we have to offer.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.